Second hour crash course videos. The questions will show up prior to the video. If the group doesn't fully answer the question, be sure to look in the book or any other online resource. Your test is due on Thursday, May 7th, at the beginning of the hour. Question number 1. Explain the type of governments in Japan, Germany, and the Soviet Union. How did their leaders take power and what conditions allowed for this to happen? You can use chapter 16.1 on Schoology or 24.1 in your textbook to help.
A totalitarian regime is a government that controls every aspect of the life of its citizens. An example of a totalitarian regime is Nazi Germany. Mussolini established a totalitarian regime in Italy. He did this because he knew that they would believe his word since he was a powerful speaker. The people of Italy were unemployed and seeking for help. He knew they'd be vulnerable and easy to take over. He played on the fears of economic collapse and communism. He says, "Italy wants peace, work, and calm. I will give these things with love if possible, with force if necessary." In 1921, Mussolini created the Fascist Party. Fascism is a governmental system led by a dictator having complete power. Mussolini called himself the leader and soon extended his fascist control to all of Italy. Followed by Mussolini, Adolf Hitler had begun a path towards a similar power. He started the Nazi Party and became the leader soon after joining. He introduced Nazism to the Nazi Party as a plan of action. His plan was to enforce a racial purification. The Great Depression helped Nazis come to power. In 1932, the Nazis became the strongest political party in Germany. In 1933, Hitler was announced prime minister.
Why and how did militarists gain control of Japan?
Communist leaders were trying to take control of the government of Japan. These leaders shared a common belief with Hitler, which was the need for more living space in a growing population. Ignoring Japanese officials' protests, they launched a surprise attack on Manchuria, which is a Chinese province. They attacked and seized control in 1931. In months, Japanese troops controlled the province. The League of Nations was established after World War I to prevent such aggressive acts. In this test of the League's power, representatives were sent to Manchuria to investigate the report and condemn Japan, who simply quit the League. The success of the invasion put the militarists firmly in control of Japan's government.
Why was Joseph Stalin named Man of Steel? Joseph Stalin's last name meant Man of Steel. Joseph Stalin took control of the Soviet Union in 1924 after V.I. Lenin died. Stalin focused on creating a good communist state. He focused on agriculture and industrial growth. Stalin got rid of privately owned farms and made larger collective farms, which are government-owned farms. Each farm had many families working on it. In 1937, the Soviet Union was the world's second-largest industrial power behind the United States. Stalin got rid of anyone who tried to destroy his power. He caused about 8 to 13 million people to die. More died from famines from restructuring the society. Stalin had a totalitarian government in 1939. The government had control over all citizens.
Now a word from Joseph Stalin.
A single death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic.
Thank you, Joseph.
He didn't want anyone to destroy his power. Anyone who tried, he would have killed. He didn't care that millions of people were dying. About 20 million people died from non-combat deaths, such as imprisonment, famine, being forced out of their land, labor camps, and execution.
Why did Stalin and Hitler go to war?
Hitler invaded Poland, so there was no buffer zone between the two countries anymore. Stalin assumed Hitler would try to take over the Soviet Union next. Stalin got his army ready and mobile. Since both armies were ready to fight, the war began between Stalin and
Let's go take a look in this secret compartment. Wow, look at this. $5 million mark that the Germans used to pay off their debt, but really they're worthless.
Question number 2. What two things made England harder to take over than the rest of Europe? Number 3. What was the purpose of the Soviet Non-Aggression Pact?
Hello everybody, this is Crash Course Polkowski, and today we're going to talk about World War II. Today we're going to talk about the World War II European theater in the European countries. And as you can see here, here's a German soldier and tank and plane doing a blitzkrieg maneuver.
Mr. Miller, what's blitzkrieg?
Blitzkrieg was a war maneuver used in World War II by the Germans. Called lightning war, it would often decimate other countries by using soldiers, tanks, and planes to quickly bombard the country while no one was expecting an attack. Used in such countries as Poland, Belgium, France, and Denmark, it would quickly destroy the countries and their soldiers in resistance, and offer up a very clear way for the German soldiers to invade. Now, except for Britain, it didn't really work because Britain would never surrender.
After Britain's major cities were turned to rubble after the Battle of Britain, why did they not surrender to Germany? To Britons, surrendering to Germany would be the worst thing they could ever do. Winston Churchill, the Chamberlain's political rival in Great Britain, says this: "We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight in the seas and the oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills, and we shall never surrender."
Hey guys, it's time for the mystery document. So, here's the rules. Taylor's going to say the document, and if I get it right, I silly string Taylor and Tyler. But if I get it wrong, I get silly string. So, Taylor, read.
When I said that British fighter bombers had shot up my tanks with 40mm shells, the Reichsmarshal, who felt himself touched by this, said, "That's completely impossible. The Americans only know how to make razor blades." I replied, "We could do with some of those razor blades, Herr Reichsmarschall."
The writer of the mystery document was General Erwin Rommel. And I got the answer correct.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me when to go.
Go.
So, since I got the mystery document right, it's my turn to silly string Taylor. So, let's go. I know, then I win. All the pieces. Okay, that's it. Tell me when to go.
Ready? Oh, it's still going.
Oh, okay. So now it's Tyler's turn. All right.
On August 23, 1939, shortly before World War II broke out in Europe, the two enemies, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, surprised the world by signing the German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, which was supposed to last for the next 10 years. A non-aggression pact is when two countries agree to take no military action against each other. With Europe on the brink of another major war, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin viewed the pact as a way to keep his nation on peaceful terms with Germany. While giving him time to build up the Soviet military, German Chancellor Adolf Hitler used the pact to make sure Germany was able to invade Poland unopposed. The pact also contained a secret agreement in which the Soviets and Germans agreed that how they would later divide up Eastern Europe. In June 1941, when Nazi forces invaded the Soviet Union, the German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact fell apart.
Question number 4. What was Tojo and Japan's impact on the war? Number 5. Why did Japan side with Germany?
Hey, no.
To answer the simple question of what nations tied the Axis power together, it was Germany, Italy, and Japan. They all had a common interest in destabilizing the European order. They signed an anti-Comintern treaty which stated that if the Soviet Union attacked, they would both meet together to see what measures they would take to see how to fight against this attack. It also stated that neither of them would get in any kind of relationship with the Soviet Union government.
In July 1937, Hideki Tojo, Chief of Staff of Japan's Kuomintang Army, launched the invasion into China. Hideki Tojo was described as smart, hard-boiled, resourceful, contemptuous of theories. He died on December 23, 1948, from a hanging for his war crimes.
The Axis powers were Germany, Italy, and Japan, who formed an agreed alliance. The Allies were the countries that formed an alliance against the Axis powers that consisted of 26 nations.
Fascism was an ideology which glorified the military, denounced international organizations and corporations, and considered war as an acceptable means for achieving heinous goals. Hitler and Mussolini adopted aggressive foreign policies involving war as an intended, even desired method.
In the first 6 months after Pearl Harbor, the Japanese conquered an empire that dwarfed Hitler's Third Reich. On the Asian mainland, Japanese troops overran Hong Kong, French Indonesia, Malaya, Bermuda, Thailand, and much of China. They also swept across south and east across the Pacific, conquering the Dutch East Indies, Guam, Wake Island, the Solomon Isles, and countless other outposts in the oceans, including 2 islands in the Aleutian chain, which were part of Alaska. Japan's next thrust was towards Midway, a strategic island which lies northwest of Hawaii. Here again, the Allies succeeded in stopping the Japanese. Americans had broke the Japanese code and knew that Midway was to be their next target.
But Carl, I thought you said the Japanese were doing good.
They were, but then Admiral Chester Nimitz came into play. The commander of the American naval forces in the Pacific moved to defend the island on June 3, 1942. The scout planes found the Japanese fleet. The Americans sent torpedo planes and dive bombers to attack. The Japanese were caught by their planes still on the decks of their carriers. The result were devastating. By the end of the Battle of Midway, the Japanese had lost 4 aircraft carriers, a cruiser, and 250 planes. In the words of the Japanese official at Midway, the Americans had avenged Pearl Harbor.
Oh, it's a rogue kamikaze plane.
Oh my god, you said the secret word!
Kamikaze. Kamikaze were suicide attacks by military aviators from the Empire of Japan against Allied naval vessels.
German attacked American supply ships at night with up to 40 submarines at a time. This was known as German Wolfpacks. Aircrafts could patrol 1,000 miles of the sea to scout for enemy convoys.
Banzai! Explain in detail and using examples the importance of women in the war. You may want to focus on the WAAC.
Okay, so this is our presentation about America enlisting in the war effort.
There were Mexican Americans in the army because some people didn't want to hire women and they needed people in the army. Plus, Mexicans worked for low wages and people wanted to hire them more.
And now it's time for our secret document. So today is 3 definitions. The first definition is the WAAC, the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps. This was a program where women would serve in non-combat positions, and we're talking about it in right part. Then we have the rationing, which was the OPA giving out food slips to citizens to ration food. And then, last but not least, we have the War Production Band, WPB, and this was a organization that converted non-war producers, for example, producers of cars and pencils, into war producers. Okay, our next question is, what did the military workforce do when their need for soldiers got so great that they just couldn't keep up with it anymore? George Marshall, a commander, pushed for the formation of the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps, WAAC. And he said, there are innumerable duties now being performed by soldiers that can be done better by women. Under this bill, women volunteers would serve in non-combat positions. And even though some members of the Congress opposed the bill, calling it the silliest piece of legislation they had ever seen, the bill establishing the WAAC became law on May 15, 1942. The law gave the WAAC workers an official status and salary, but only a few of the benefits that were granted to male soldiers. In July 1942,